Captain Zelith's three eyes focused on the scanner readings with growing unease. The Corthian exploration vessel Silent Wing had been traveling through what their star charts labeled as uninhabited space for 7 rotations, following the faint energy signatures that might lead them to the missing fleets. 12 expeditions had vanished in this sector over the past century. 12 different species, all technologically advanced, all confident in their superiority. The Hegemony Council had finally grown concerned enough to send the Silent Wing to investigate. They chose the Corthians for their reputation as cautious explorers and their advanced stealth technology. "Commander, we're detecting debris fields ahead," reported Navigator Quix, her tentacles dancing across the bio-neural interface. "Multiple ship types, multiple species. The energy readings match our missing expedition records." Zelith's mandibles clicked nervously. The debris spread across several light hours, twisted metal and ceramic composites drifting in the void like a graveyard of civilizations. He recognized hull configurations from the proud Zephyrian Empire, the calculating Nexus Collective, even fragments of the ancient Vorthan warships that were considered nearly indestructible. "What could have done this?" whispered Science Officer Thane, his scaled hide rippling with fear. "The damage patterns are unlike anything in our databases. These ships weren't just destroyed, they were torn apart." As they moved deeper into the debris field, their sensors picked up something that made Zelith's purple blood run cold. A single massive structure floating in the distance, clearly artificial, but unlike any design they'd encountered. It was angular, brutal in its simplicity, constructed from what appeared to be basic steel and ceramic. Primitive materials, yet somehow it had survived whatever catastrophe had claimed the advanced fleets around it. "It's so crude," Quix observed, her translator struggling with the concept. "Their metallurgy appears to be thousands of years behind even our oldest records. How did such a primitive construct survive when our most advanced vessels were destroyed?" The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, but what disturbed them most were the markings across its surface. Geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, symbols that their translation matrices couldn't parse, and something else, something that made their enhanced senses recoil. "Captain," Thane's voice was barely a whisper, "I'm detecting life signs inside that structure. They're still alive in there." Zelith stared at the impossible sight. Whatever species had built this crude fortress had not only survived the destruction of 12 advanced fleets, they had made their home in the wreckage. The implication sent tremors through his exoskeleton. "Set course for minimum safe distance," he ordered. "We need to understand what we're dealing with before we report back to the Council. But under no circumstances do we get close enough to be detected." As the Silent Wing adjusted its position, using the debris field for cover, they began to monitor the structure's communications. The signals they intercepted were primitive radio waves, unencrypted and chaotic. But when their translation systems finally began to decode the language, what they heard changed everything. The beings inside weren't just survivors. They were farmers, workers, families. They had children playing in the corridors of this massive structure. They had transformed this place of death into a home. And most terrifying of all, they spoke of the old times when the visitors used to come before they learned better. Zelith realized they weren't looking at the aftermath of a battle. They were looking at the home of the victors built from the bones of their enemies. "Commander." Quix's voice was steady despite her fear. "We need to leave. Now. If these beings defeated 12 advanced fleets with such primitive technology, what could they do to us?" But as she spoke, new contacts appeared on their screens. Ships were emerging from hidden bays within the structure, ships built from the salvage technology of the defeated fleets, crude but functional hybrids of a dozen different technologies, and they were heading directly for the Silent Wing's position. Somehow, despite all their stealth technology and careful approach, they had been detected. The hybrid vessels moved with surprising coordination despite their mismatched appearance. Each ship was a patchwork of salvaged technologies, Zephyrian energy cores welded to Nexus hulls, Vorthan weapon systems integrated with completely unknown components. They should have been flying scrap heaps, but somehow they maintained perfect formation and moved with deadly purpose. "Evasive maneuvers," Zelith ordered, but even as he spoke, he knew it was too late. The hybrid fleet had positioned themselves, with tactical precision that spoke of deep military knowledge. They weren't randomly attacking, they were herding the Silent Wing like experienced hunters. Captain, incoming transmission, reported Communications Officer Vex, her gill slits fluttering with anxiety. It's on multiple frequencies simultaneously, using translation protocols from at least 6 different species. Put it through. The voice that filled their command center was unlike anything in their databases. It carried undertones that their universal translators struggled to process, as if the speaker's vocal cords had evolved for a completely different purpose than communication. Yet the words were clear, spoken in flawless galactic standard. Unidentified vessel, you are trespassing in claimed space. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to flee or resist will be considered hostile action. Zealith's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this. The speaker knew their language perfectly, understood their protocols, yet spoke with the casual authority of someone who had never doubted their ability to enforce their will. This is Captain Zealith of the exploration vessel, Silent Wing, operating under Hegemony Council authority. We are conducting a peaceful investigation into missing expeditions. We mean no harm. A sound came through the comm that might have been laughter, though no species they knew produced anything quite like it. We know why you're here, Captain. You want to know what happened to the others. That's good. It shows you're learning. But knowledge comes with a price. The hybrid ships moved closer, and the Silent Wing's sensors revealed something that made Thane's scales turn pale. These weren't fully automated vessels. They detected life signs aboard each ship, but the readings were confusing. The biological signatures didn't match any known species in their databases. Captain, Thane whispered, the life forms on those ships, they're not uniform. Each vessel shows different biological patterns, but they're all working together perfectly. It's as if they've somehow united multiple species under one command structure. The lead hybrid ship moved alongside them, and through the viewports, they caught their first glimpse of their captors. The beings visible through the enemy vessels. Bridge windows were clearly not the same species that had built the crude structure. In fact, they appeared to be from different species entirely, working side by side with an ease that defied everything the hegemony knew about interspecies cooperation. Impossible, Quix breathed. Zephyrians, Nexus constructs, even what looks like Vorthan officers. But they're all dead. Their fleets were destroyed. No, the alien voice came through the comm again, apparently having heard their conversation through sensors they hadn't detected. They weren't destroyed. They were recruited, just like you're about to be. Docking clamps engaged with the Silent Wing's hull before their crew could react. The hybrid ship systems interfaced with theirs, using connection protocols from a dozen different civilizations, all of them perfectly adapted to work together. You see, the voice continued as boarding preparations began, humans don't destroy what they can use, and every species has something useful to offer. The Zephyrians had excellent navigation systems. The Nexus brought computational power. The Vorthans contributed their military discipline. Even the smallest expeditions brought new perspectives, new solutions to old problems. Through the hull, they could hear the distinctive sound of cutting tools. But these weren't the crude implements they might have expected from such a primitive species. These were precision instruments that seemed to know exactly how to breach Korthian hull plating. Who are you people? Zealith demanded. We're humans, Captain, and we're very good at making friends. The airlock hissed open, and Captain Zealith found himself face to face with creatures that challenged everything he thought he knew about galactic evolution. The beings that stepped aboard the Silent Wing were bipedal, roughly the same height as a Korthian, but their body structure was radically different from any species in the databases. They had only 2 eyes, positioned on the front of their heads like predators, and their skin was a pale pinkish color that seemed almost translucent. Most disturbing of all, they showed their teeth when they approached, which every civilized species knew was a threat display. But behind these creatures came others. A tall, elegant being that was unmistakably Zephyrian, its crystalline skin catching the light as it moved. A floating Nexus construct, its geometric form shifting subtly as it processed information. Even a massive Vorthon warrior, its forearms crossed in what should have been a gesture of defiance but somehow looked relaxed. Almost friendly. Captain Zealith, said the lead human, extending one of its appendages in what their cultural database identified as a greeting gesture among primitive species. I'm Commander Sarah Chen, representing the Terran Colonial Authority. Welcome to human space. Zelith stared at the offered appendage, his mind racing. Terran? That name doesn't appear in any of our star charts. That's because Terra is what we call our homeworld. Most of the galaxy knows it as Sol 3 if they know it at all. We're a relatively new addition to the galactic community. Chen's expression remained friendly, but there was something in her eyes that reminded Zelith of the hunting cats from his homeworld. The Zephyrian stepped forward, its voice carrying the harmonic overtones characteristic of its species. Captain, I am Navigator Prime Christhon, formerly of the exploration vessel Star's Edge. I want you to understand that we are not prisoners here. We are partners. This was impossible. Zelith's files clearly indicated that Christhon had been aboard one of the vessels lost in this sector decades ago. Yet here it stood, apparently healthy and cooperative with these humans. Partners in what? Zelith demanded. Commander Chen gestured toward the massive structure visible through the viewports. In the greatest construction project the galaxy has ever seen. What you see out there isn't just a habitat, Captain. It's the foundation of something much larger. We're building a new kind of civilization, one where every species contributes their unique strengths instead of competing for dominance. Science Officer Thane's scales rippled with confusion. But the debris fields, the destroyed ships, defensive actions, the Vorthon warrior rumbled, its voice carrying the authority of countless battles. I am War Leader Corax, and I can tell you that every vessel destroyed in this sector fired first. Humans have a saying, peace through strength. They prefer cooperation, but they are exceptionally skilled at warfare when necessary. Commander Chen nodded. We tried peaceful contact at first. Standard first contact protocols, universal greeting frequencies, even mathematical communications. But every expedition that found us assumed we were primitives to be conquered or catalogued. They didn't come to trade or communicate. They came to claim. Navigator Quix's tentacles writhed nervously. So you destroyed them all? We defended ourselves, Chen corrected. And afterwards we extended the same offer we're extending to you now. Join us. Share your knowledge and culture, and in return, become part of something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The Nexus construct's form shifted, its mechanical voice carrying surprising warmth. Designation, Former Research Unit 47 Alpha. Current function, Integration Specialist. The human's proposal offers optimization opportunities that exceed all previous calculations. Their collaborative approach yields exponential improvements in efficiency and innovation. Zelith looked around at the mixed crew, trying to understand what he was seeing. These beings from different species weren't just working together. They seemed genuinely comfortable with each other. The humans had somehow achieved what the Hegemony Council had been struggling with for millennia. True interspecies cooperation. What exactly are you proposing? He asked carefully. Commander Chen smiled, and this time Zelith noticed that the expression didn't seem threatening when directed at allies. Simple. Your crew and your ship join our community. You keep your cultural identity, your command structure, your traditions, but you also contribute to our shared projects and benefit from everyone else's contributions. Your Korthian stealth technology, for instance, would be invaluable for our deep space exploration efforts. And if we refuse? The smile faded slightly. Then you leave. We'll escort you to the edge of our territory, and you can report back to your Hegemony Council. But Captain, I think you should see what we've built here before you decide. I think you'll be surprised by what's possible when species work together instead of against each other. Through the viewports, Zelith could see more vessels approaching. Ships of designs he'd never seen before, clearly built from collaborative technologies. And on each one he could make out crews of mixed species working together with an efficiency that seemed almost miraculous. For the first time since entering this sector, Zelith began to wonder if they had found something far more valuable than answers about the missing expeditions. The tour of the human station defied every expectation Zelith had formed during his decades of space exploration. What had appeared from a distance to be a crude construction revealed itself to be a marvel of integrated engineering. Corridors designed to accommodate different atmospheric requirements ran parallel to each other, connected by transition chambers that could adjust pressure, temperature, and gas composition in seconds. Commander Chen led them through sections that housed multiple species in perfect harmony. Zephyrian crystal gardens grew alongside Nexus computation cores. while Vorthan training facilities neighbored what appeared to be human agricultural labs. Each area was designed not just for function, but for the psychological comfort of its inhabitants. "This is impossible," Thane whispered, his scales shifting to colors that indicated deep amazement. "Our xenobiologists have spent centuries trying to solve interspecies habitat compatibility. How did you solve it so quickly?" A human technician overheard and approached them with the casual friendliness that seemed characteristic of the species. "We didn't solve it quickly. We solved it together. When you have Nexus computational power analyzing Zephyrian environmental preferences, while Vorthan engineers handle the structural challenges and humans coordinate the project, problems become opportunities." They entered a vast chamber that took Zelith's breath away. It was a combined workshop and laboratory, where beings from different species worked side by side on projects that seemed to blend technologies in ways that should have been impossible. A Zephyrian artist was collaborating with a human engineer to create what appeared to be living metal that responded to harmonic frequencies. Nearby, Nexus constructs worked with Vorthan warriors to design weapons that seemed to think for themselves. "Every species approaches problems differently," Chen explained as they walked. "Humans tend to be generalists, good at seeing connections between different fields. Zephyrians excel at understanding energy patterns and harmonics. The Nexus provides computational power and logical analysis that exceeds anything we could achieve individually. Fortans bring combat experience and tactical thinking that keeps us all safe." Navigator Quix's tentacles danced nervously as she processed what she was seeing. But the cultural conflicts, the different value systems, the competitive instincts that every species develops, still exist, admitted war leader Korax, who had been following their group. But humans have a remarkable ability to find common ground. They seem to instinctively understand what motivates other species and how to channel those motivations toward shared goals. They entered what Chen called the Memorial Chamber, a solemn space filled with displays honoring those who had died in the conflicts that brought each species to this station. But rather than celebrating victories, the displays focused on what had been learned from each encounter. "Every battle taught us something," Chen said quietly. "The Zephyrian fleet's sacrifice showed us the importance of understanding cultural motivations. The Nexus attack demonstrated how logical beings could be reasoned with if approached correctly. Even the Vorthan Warfleet's assault taught us about honor and respect in combat." Zelith studied a display showing the remains of a Korthian scout ship that had apparently been destroyed years earlier. "You've encountered my species before." The scout ship whispered truth. Chen nodded. "They attacked without warning, but their crew fought with incredible bravery. Their sacrifice taught us about Korthian tactical doctrine and helped us develop countermeasures for stealth technology. When we encountered your ship, we were ready." Science Officer Thane examined the technical displays with growing excitement. "Captain, look at these power output readings. They've integrated Zephyrian crystal matrices with Nexus processing cores and human industrial capacity. The energy efficiency is beyond anything in our databases." But it was Navigator Quix who asked the question that had been troubling Zelith since they'd arrived. "Why show us all this? Why reveal your capabilities and your methods? Aren't you concerned we'll report back to the hegemony?" Commander Chen exchanged glances with her mixed species team, and for a moment, Zelith saw something that chilled him. It was the look of beings who were absolutely confident in their abilities, who had no fear of any force the hegemony might send against them. "Captain Zelith," Chen said finally, "we want you to report back. We want the Hegemony Council to understand exactly what they're dealing with, because we're tired of being attacked by expeditions that assume we're easy targets. It's time for a different kind of first contact." She led them to a vast window that looked out over the construction areas surrounding the station. What Zelith saw there made his 3 hearts skip beats. Ships were being built on a scale that dwarfed anything the hegemony had ever attempted. But these weren't warships, despite their obvious defensive capabilities. They were exploration vessels, colony ships, research platforms, all designed to accommodate multiple species working together. "We're not building an empire, Captain," Chen continued. "We're building a future. A place where species don't have to choose between cooperation and independence, where diversity is strength rather than weakness. But we need that future to be secure, which means the galaxy needs to understand that we're not the primitives they can push around anymore." Zelith stared at the construction fleet, his mind reeling with the implications. These humans hadn't just survived contact with advanced civilizations, They had absorbed their knowledge, integrated their people, and built something entirely new. Something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "What do you want from the hegemony?" he asked. "Nothing they're not willing to give," Chen replied. "But we want them to ask instead of assuming they can take." The decision meeting took place in what the humans called the council chamber, a circular room designed to accommodate the physiological needs of multiple species simultaneously. Zealeth and his crew sat at a specially configured section that provided optimal lighting and atmospheric conditions for Corthians, while representatives from each integrated species occupied their own adapted areas. Commander Chen sat in the center, but Zealeth noticed that she didn't dominate the discussion. Instead, she facilitated it, drawing input from each species representative with a skill that spoke of years of practice. This wasn't human dominance disguised as cooperation. It was genuine collaborative leadership. "Your crew is welcome to stay as long as they need to make their decision," Chen was saying. "We understand this is a significant choice, and we don't want anyone to feel pressured." War Leader Korax leaned forward, his forearms gesturing in what Zealeth recognized as a Vorthan expression of earnest conviction. "Captain, when my warfleet first encountered the humans, we expected easy conquest. Their technology appeared primitive, their defenses seemed minimal. We learned otherwise very quickly." "What happened?" asked Science Officer Thane, his scales rippling with curiosity. "They fought like beings with nothing to lose and everything to protect," Korax replied. "But more importantly, they fought smart. Every tactic we used, they adapted to. Every weapon we deployed, they found countermeasures for. And when the battle was over and we expected slavery or death, they offered us medical aid and asked us to explain our grievances." Navigator Prime Christhon's harmonic voice added another perspective. "The humans have a concept they call learning from failure. When they encounter a problem they cannot solve with their current knowledge, they find those who can solve it and convince them to share that knowledge. It is remarkably effective." The Nexus construct's form shifted as it processed data. Efficiency calculations indicate that human collaborative methods produce outcomes superior to traditional conquest models by factors ranging from 300 to 200%, depending on the variables measured. Zealeth listened to these testimonials with growing unease, not because he doubted their sincerity, but because he was beginning to understand the true scope of what he was facing. These humans had not just defeated superior forces, they had converted them into willing allies. The implications for the hegemony's traditional power structure were staggering. "What about your own cultures?" Navigator Quix asked. "Surely working so closely together has meant sacrificing your individual identities." Commander Chen smiled. "Would you like to see tonight's cultural exchange program?" She led them to an enormous amphitheater, where hundreds of beings from different species had gathered. On the central stage, a performance was taking place that defied categorization. Zephyrian harmonic artists were collaborating with human musicians to create sounds that seemed to resonate with the very structure of the station. Fourth-hand warriors performed ceremonial dances that had been adapted to tell the story of first contact with humans. Nexus constructs projected holographic displays that turned mathematical concepts into visual art. Each species maintains their traditions, Chen explained, but we also create new ones together. The performance you're seeing tonight tells the story of our community's formation, from each species' perspective simultaneously. It's become one of our most popular events. But what impressed Zealeth most was the audience. Beings from different species sat together, their attention focused not just on performers from their own cultures, but showing genuine appreciation for arts they had never experienced before. Children of different species played together in the spaces between seating areas, their games apparently transcending the biological and cultural barriers that separated their parents' generations. "This is what we're offering the hegemony," Chen said as they found seats. "Not conquest, not submission, but partnership. A chance to be part of something larger than any single civilization." Science Officer Thane leaned forward intently. "But surely there are conflicts, disagreements about direction and priorities." "Constantly," Chen admitted with a laugh. "But we've learned to see those conflicts as opportunities for innovation rather than threats to unity. When Vorthons and Nexus constructs disagree about tactical approaches, the result is usually a solution neither could have developed alone." As if to demonstrate her point, a minor disruption occurred near the stage where a group of young Vorthon warriors, seemed to be arguing with some human adolescents about the performance. But instead of escalating, the disagreement quickly transformed into an animated discussion that drew in Zephyrian and Nexus observers. Within minutes, they were collaborating on an impromptu addition to the performance that incorporated elements from all their suggestions. "How do you make it work?" Zalith asked, genuinely curious now. "Every multi-species alliance in recorded history has eventually collapsed due to cultural incompatibilities and competing interests, because they were alliances of necessity," replied War Leader Corax. "Groups coming together to face external threats or pursue mutual advantages. But humans build something different. They build communities of choice where participation is voluntary, but benefits are shared." Commander Chen nodded. "We learned early that you can't force cooperation, but you can create environments where cooperation is more rewarding than competition. When every species' contributions are valued and every individual's welfare matters, conflicts become problems to solve together rather than battles to win." Navigator Quix's tentacles writhed thoughtfully. "And when you encounter species that refuse to cooperate?" The warmth in Chen's expression cooled slightly. "Then we defend ourselves and our community. But we always leave the door open for future dialogue. Some of our most valuable community members are former enemies who needed time to understand what we were offering." As the evening's performance reached its climax, with all the different species' artistic traditions blending into something entirely new, yet respectful of each component culture, Zalith found himself facing the most difficult decision of his career. He could return to the hegemony and report on this unprecedented civilization, knowing that his report would likely trigger attempts at conquest or control. Or he could recommend that the hegemony approach these humans as equals, seeking partnership rather than dominance. But deep down, he was beginning to suspect there might be a third option, one that would change not just his mission but his entire life. 3 days later, Captain Zelith stood in the Silent Wing's communication array, preparing to send what might be the most important message in galactic history. His crew had made their individual decisions, and to his surprise, the results were not what he had expected when they first encountered the human fleet. Science Officer Thane had requested permission to remain at the station for an extended research exchange. The collaborative projects he had witnessed offered opportunities for advancement in fields that the hegemony's competitive structure made impossible. Navigator Quix had been fascinated by the human approach to long-range exploration and wanted to contribute Corthian navigational expertise to their upcoming deep space missions. Only Communications Officer Vex had chosen to return home immediately, not out of fear or distrust, but because she believed the hegemony needed to hear about these developments from someone they would trust completely. "Are you certain about this, Captain?" Commander Chen asked as she reviewed the message Zelith was preparing to send. "Once the hegemony receives this information, there's no going back. The galaxy is going to change." Zelith's mandibles clicked, in what humans had learned to recognize as determined resolve. "The galaxy needs to change, Commander. What I've seen here proves that our old assumptions about interspecies relations were not just wrong, they were catastrophically limiting." The message was carefully crafted to avoid triggering the hegemony's automatic defensive responses while conveying the full significance of what they had discovered. Zelith explained the fate of the missing expeditions, the nature of human defensive capabilities, and most importantly, the unprecedented success of their collaborative civilization. But the message also contained a warning, phrased in diplomatic language that nonetheless made its meaning clear. Any attempt to conquer or control the human territories would fail, just as previous expeditions had failed. The humans and their allies were no longer the isolated primitives that early scouts had reported. They had become something entirely new, something that could defend itself against any force the hegemony might deploy. "The difficult part," Zelith dictated to the recording system, "will be convincing the Council that cooperation is not surrender. The humans offer partnership between equals, not submission to superior authority. This represents a paradigm shift that many Council members will struggle to accept." Commander Chen listened to the message with the focused attention of someone who understood the stakes involved. "Captain, I want you to know that regardless of how the hegemony responds, you and your crew will always be welcome here. You've shown the kind of courage and wisdom that our community values." As the message transmission began its journey toward hegemony space, Zelith reflected on the changes that 3 days had brought to his understanding of the galaxy. He had come here seeking answers about missing expeditions, and had instead discovered a vision of the future that challenged everything he thought he knew about civilization itself. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we wait," Chen replied, "and we prepare. Your message will reach the hegemony in approximately 2 months. Their response, whatever form it takes, will arrive about 4 months after that. That gives us time to continue building, continue growing, and continue demonstrating that our way works." Through the viewports, Zelith could see the construction fleet at work. New vessels were taking shape, designed with input from every species in the community. Exploration ships that could survive in environments no single species could handle alone. Research platforms that could tackle scientific questions from multiple perspectives simultaneously. And yes, defensive vessels that incorporated the best military thinking from a dozen different civilizations. War leader Korax approached them, his expression serious. "Captain, there's something you should know before you make your final decision. The humans have shared with us their projections for potential hegemony responses. They believe there is a significant probability that your report will be dismissed as either deception or collaboration with hostile forces." Zelith's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement. He had considered this possibility himself. The Hegemony Council's worldview had been shaped by millennia of competitive expansion and resource control. The concept of voluntary interspecies cooperation might literally be incomprehensible to them. "Which is why," Commander Chen added, "we've prepared a demonstration." She led him to the station's primary observation deck, where a section of the outer hull had been configured as a transparent aluminum viewing area. Beyond the construction zones, space itself seemed to be moving. It took Zelith several moments to realize what he was seeing. Ships, hundreds of them, emerging from concealment throughout the system. Not just the hybrid vessels they had seen before, but purpose-built craft that represented the full collaborative potential of the human-led alliance. Sleek Zephyrian-designed hulls powered by Nexus computational cores and human industrial capacity. Vorthan-engineered weapons systems that could be operated by any species. Scout ships that combined Korthian stealth technology with human adaptability. "This is our response to potential hegemony aggression," Chen said calmly. "We don't want war, Captain, but we're ready for it if it comes. And more importantly, we're ready to show the galaxy that there's a better way to live than constant competition for dominance." Navigator Prime Christhon joined them at the viewing wall, his harmonic voice carrying undertones of deep satisfaction. "Captain Zelith, when my people first achieved spaceflight, we dreamed of finding others among the stars who would share our love of knowledge and exploration. The hegemony offered us protection in exchange for tribute. The humans offered us partnership in exchange for friendship. The choice was simple." Zelith stared at the assembled fleet, finally understanding the true scope of what he had stumbled into. This wasn't just a successful colony or an unusual alliance. This was the birth of a new kind of galactic civilization, one that could fundamentally alter the balance of power that had existed for millennia. "The hegemony will see this as a threat," he said finally. "Yes," Chen agreed. "But they'll also see the futility of trying to destroy it through force, and hopefully some of them will see the opportunity it represents, the chance to be part of something better than what came before." As Zelith prepared to board the shuttle that would take him back to the Silent Wing for his journey home, he carried with him more than just a report on missing expeditions. He carried the knowledge that the galaxy was changing, whether the hegemony was ready for it or not. And for the first time in his long career, he was excited about the future.